Hey, Sean, do you know what? I think that our listener want real protection against cyber risk. And I know that High Trust is the leader in cybersecurity assurance. But what makes them the go to choice?
Well, according to our friends at HITRUST, because their framework covers 100% of the known tactics, techniques, and procedures, in 2024, organizations with a HITRUST certification had just a 0.59% incident rate, meaning 99.41 stayed breach free.
That's solid. But what about staying sharp over time?
HITRUST regular certification process isn't just a checkbox, it actually drives improvement. Repeat customers see up to 54% fewer corrective actions needed year over year. And now, with their new AI security assessment and certification, you can actually tackle AI risk with confidence as well.
Then check out the iTrust framework. Go to hightrustalliance.net to learn more.
Marco, it says I'm alive.
We are live from Black Hat, Las
Alive,
Vegas.
not alive.
No, we're not. No, we're not in
I'm not
Black
alive.
Hat.
You're not.
You have a
I'm not
black
alive,
hat.
and you're not a black hat.
You have a black hat.
I do have a black hat.
Did you do it on
I wore
purpose?
that special today. Exactly.
There you go.
I usually wear this when I'm riding my bike, but I took it out of the pack today to sport the black hat gear.
Are you
'Cause
going to
that's what we're
bike to
talking
Las
about.
Vegas?
I'm going to ride my bike to Las Vegas
All
and
right.
melt.
I'll see you there in a couple of months.
I don't want to hear your mixtape on the drive up. So
You're going to have to. That's been the talk of the internet.
I know, I'm going to torture you with mine and me with yours. All right.
What music are we going to hear in the car? But that's not the reason why we're here. We're here with a bunch of cool people, way cooler than me and you together.
Exactly.
So I think we should just go on and have them introduce each other, although you know them all very well. And maybe you want to decide where you want to start with this. But the goal of the conversation is to kind of make some guesses on what the buzzwords and the topics are going to be the prevalent and the most talked about on the floor in Las Vegas for Black Hat 2025. So this is going to be fun. Place your bets. That's
going to be fun and very different perspectives from each of the folks joining us. They all have a view of what's going on from a vendor, from a research, from a solution perspective, and many years, many of us looking at this space. We have an opportunity to look back as well to kind of see how trends are shifting. Let's do a quick round of intros, and I want to thank everybody who's joining and watching on demand as well. Maybe just a few words, kind of your background and maybe your thoughts on Black Hat with respect to what we might hear, and then we'll get into the actual predictions. Leslie, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Leslie Kesselring, Kescom Cyber PR. We're 100% specialized cybersecurity PR firm. So I'm coming to this with the perspective of media and analysts and how they're covering the show, as well as all the awesome vendor and technology companies we work with.
Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So Mike Parisi, I'm the Chief Growth Officer at a company called Steel Patriot Partners. It's a cybersecurity consulting advisory firm. I am a recovering Big Four consultant, about 15 years in that space a while ago between PwC and Deloitte, and done a bunch of things in between. As Sean and Marco and Leslie know, I was at a cybersecurity certification body called HITRUST for 5.5 years. So been in this space for quite some time, and I've got some thoughts from a compliance and security perspective relative to what some of the discussion points are going to be.
Regulation and compliance drive security, right?
Yeah, right.
Daniel, thrilled to have you on too, my friend. And your perspective is going to be cool.
Daniel, I'm on the Black Hat Review Board and spent hundreds of hours hopefully going through all the talks that people get to enjoy.
Thank you for that. Richard.
Hey, I'm Richard Steen, and I'm a industry analyst. Joined Gartner from PwC 25 years ago, but I didn't last very long at Gartner. Left after 4 years, started my own firm, and I've been attending Black Hat and the other big conferences, off and on, I guess, since then. And like all of you, use it as a way to identify trends. Unfortunately, especially right now, things are so accelerated that the trends are lagging. So, Daniel, any of the talks that you approved were I assume you approved them, earlier this year. So much has happened in the security world since then that there won't be any talks unless people have updated them at the last minute. So much going on. Gonna have quite a week.
Yeah, a good resource in your security yearbook there, Richard. Folks should check that out. Rupesh.
Sure. So Rupesh Chakshi, I'm with Akamai Technologies, SVP and General Manager. I run the application security business. So all of the web application, firewall, API security, bot, AI security, part of my team and my responsibility. Exciting. I mean, in the industry, cybersecurity 10 plus year. I was with AT&T prior to Akamai. Then every year I feel like, just the pace at which cybersecurity moves is much faster than many other, trends or industries as a whole. I'm looking forward to kind of two things, which I think is going to be very well represented, which is securing all of the AI and GenAI, and then leveraging AI in security, right? So kind of both of those angles.
Well, I want to jump on this right away because people that know me, when I look at society and technology, I definitely agree. Things are going so fast that it's almost impossible to make prediction unless you're predicting what you're going to have for lunch in an hour or so, depending where you are in the world. But the point is, I would like to start with where I usually like to start, which is looking a little bit back. And maybe the past 10 years, which Black Hat's been going on for longer than that. But I think we have a panel here that has been around for a while. Not aging anybody, but we definitely have some experience here. So anybody wants to give it a go with how fast, let's say, things are accelerating? Maybe Richard, you kind of mentioned that, so we could start with you. Maybe it was much easier to make prediction 10 years ago, 15 years ago, based on also what you already said.
It felt like it was because you could see, the big holes that were missing. And the biggest drivers back then were the threat actors. So as we went to the world of cybercrime and, Trojans to steal credentials off of cell phones, it became easy to predict where the defensive side would go and who would invest in it and stuff like that. And then as the problems got harder and harder, we needed to do more security analytics, and we needed XDR or MDR if you're outsourcing it. So it's kind of easy to predict those trends. The one thing that was not predictable by anybody, of course, was the advent of large language models in a form that were applicable to everything. Every human experience is being touched by large language models. The predictions on where those are going are just outrageously impossible to grasp. You cannot understand how something that is miraculous today could be 10 times bigger at the end of August, right? Because GPT-5 is coming out 10 times better, more intelligent, faster, cheaper, whatever. You just can't grasp that. So you have to wait for it to happen and then watch, what happens from there. It's an incredible time to be involved in technology of any sort.
Richard, I want to counter you. I don't think things are moving that fast at all. From a security research perspective, so when we start looking at the reviews for Black Hat, it's a good 6-7 months before the con. Especially if you're doing good research, you get accepted and you build up and flesh out the talk. If I look at the kind of talks that gets me excited, these are decades-old bugs, decades-old problems. There's if I look at AI as a whole, in 2002, Mark and a few of us started the small thing called OWASP to tackle application security. The AI world has completely ignored 20 plus years of our lives because most of the bugs are bugs that are annoying. And if you look at like some of the things, Ben and co have managed to own the hell out of Google and Gemini with a single Google Calendar invite, right? Input validation. Rich and Andreas have found lots of old school vulnerabilities in NVIDIA drivers, right? So these old classes of bugs are still very prevalent. Yes, the tech moves fast, but security itself, it's like we are just terrible as an industry of learning from, all the graybeards before us, and I include myself there. It's like, same bug 20 years later. And I think that's the biggest thing that I get every year doing Black Hat review. It's like, wow, the stuff that we found in the 90s, still have it today.
It's the great thing about the security industry. Like it doesn't, we don't solve a problem and then move on to the next problem. We have all the old problems and new problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
I think
you
it's
know,
kind of
just
also, right, when we started many decades ago, it was more about just kind of like, if you're a large enterprise, then you focus on security because of your data and things like that. And it was all about just core, employee and data and network security. Right now, you fast forward, and every facet of life, right? I mean, users and consumers are so focused on their own personal security, the privacy aspects of it. We've seen OT pick up, or infrastructure layer attacks. We've seen the AppSec space pick up. We've seen AI space as the next revolution pick up, right? And robotics, the physical. I mean, there's so much happening in just cybersecurity and the pace at which it is moving, because it's part of just like our everyday life, right? You wake up in the morning and you just hope that you are safe and your information is safe, whether you are an individual or an enterprise.
No,
I have to admit,
Michael.
I've given up on that. I think my data is in so many toilets now. There's no such thing as privacy. Let's be brutally honest.
Michael,
Right.
go in. Yeah, I know you wanted to get on before.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about historically and throughout the years and this year's show, and I think about the fear factor, right? So, is the fear factor different now than it was in previous years? So, what do I mean by that? And Richard alluded to this, right? LLMs doing things that our minds can't even think of, right? Relative to how they're exposing us from an organizational perspective. So are people more scared now than they were before? We were always scared of threat actors, right? But if we can't even really comprehend the unknown relative to AI and LLMs, is everyone's fear factor up relative to other shows?
Right, good point. Leslie, who drives the conversation? Come on, let's get there.
Well, back on the fear factor, I mean, I do want to call out the, move to looking at nation state, threat actors, right? I mean, I think that's a big a focus this year for AI and just threat actors in general. And, we're seeing just over the past week, there was a congressional hearing talking about Stuxnet, the first cyber weapon, and how things have evolved since then, and the role China's playing right now. There's the Salt Typhoon paper supposed to be coming out from government that hasn't been released yet. You've got Nicole Perlroth talking about, her books and her new podcast, and the threat from China, especially on critical infrastructure, OT, and energy, manufacturing, water systems. So we're seeing a lot of that.
So is the news?
Question.
Is it?
Oh, sorry.
No, is it the news that drive the conversation, the marketing, the industry itself? What's your take on that? Obviously, you do PR, so
yeah. So this year can't be harder than ever, I think, for the media, because the news cycles are driving. Not the talks, because I know Daniel and the team did an awesome job vetting those, but just like the news cycles are just driving what's being written right now. I mean, the media are heading into Black Hat, still figuring out the SharePort vulnerability. I mean, that news just keeps hitting almost every day. IBM came out with their data breach, cost of data breach data, by the way, today, which is really great. But there's so many news cycles right now that, the media we've been talking to have had a hard time even thinking about what they're going to cover at Black Hat yet, because they're just trying to keep up with like the daily. And I think the government's driving a lot of that too. And I had a chance to talk to Marcy McCarthy yesterday, who's just been appointed director of public affairs for CISA. And they are going to have a presence. And I think everybody's excited about that, because that didn't happen at RSA. And they're going to be holding a media briefing that they'll be releasing more details about today. But I think the government discussion and the public-private collaboration is really driving the news cycles.
And do we?
Yeah,
go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Sean, I could echo that for sure, Leslie. It's definitely driving a lot of the cycles.
Yeah, so I mean, it used to be like at Black Hat, it was all research, right? Like that drove all the news cycles, and it still will, but all this, I think, has really taken precedent.
Right. And like in our space, so just to use like FedRAMP as an example, with a number of the initiatives around FedRAMP 20X, and you do have the government collaborating with industry to say, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? How do we do this more efficiently, more effectively? So we're seeing a lot of that on the collaboration front right now. Go ahead, Sean, sorry.
But I think what I like about Black Hat, and kind of like it's a little bit unique, is that a lot of, like threat researchers and other technical folks that are like really deep into the problem space are presenting right on the main stage and really kind of like unpacking how things might evolve. Because for a lot of people, right, at the macro level, yes, it's, we're in the AI era, or yes, agentic is here, or yes, world is going to change in so many ways. But how do you kind of like unpack that in terms of the security aspects and what needs to be done, and how does one go about, and how do you find the needle in the haystack? What are the bad guys thinking about, right? All of that I feel is, phenomenal from an educational perspective at Black Hat.
Rupesh, maybe it would help. So when we look at doing the reviews, like Black Hat gets a lot of reviews, submissions. I'm not going to say the number, but we're busy. We kind of break it down into a number of categories. The first one I like to term like the horizon scanning. These are the talks that I know will be picked up upon by researchers like myself in years to come. Threat actors might pick up on stuff. It's the stuff that isn't relevant now, but it does shape and change our industry. And we've had history of that for the last 20 plus years. We then have the day-to-day stuff. This is a bit of research that was uncovered or needs to happen. So perfect example, James Kettle. I love James Kettle. He has single-handedly pushed the AppSec industry to where it is now. He's got a great campaign this year about just killing off HTTP 1, right? Because it needs to die. But the reality is it hasn't. And that's the kind of talk that I think that we want people to go and action this the day after, say, how many HTTP 1.1 servers have we got? Oh, crap, we've got a lot. Okay, why is it bad? Because James said this. But then we also have the stuff where, there's a Windows HTTP bit of research that's coming. It's phenomenal. Like a lot of people don't realize how much HTTP is intertwined in the lower level Windows operating system. And then you've got Thomas, who has utterly destroyed a well-known processor using glitching. And we've had all the normal drama around that. So we kind of break it down into different things. And I think what's been fascinating for me over the last 20 years is seeing how threat actors take stuff at Black Hat and how quickly they either weaponize it or how quickly defenders do something with the research that they get, shown to by the researcher. It's been fascinating to watch.
Agreed. Yeah, and maybe will we ever know how many of the adversaries actually attend some of these things?
The audience of Black Hat has changed over the years. It used to be researchers, and then 2005-06 government got involved, and the old spot the Fed. It wasn't hard to spot. They seemed to like chinos and golf shoes at a hacking conference. That was a kind of thing. Nowadays, it's such a mix. You will have your 5i, you'll have IC, law enforcement, government, hackers, freakers, researchers, organized crime. Like it's such a mad mix of people. And I explain this to everybody who's never heard of it before. I'm like, this is our world stage where people come to learn, network, do all the other things in the side corridors, but it's just such a wide amount of people that from different backgrounds.
Can we put the business in that new audience too?
Yeah. So that's something where we've actually changed quite a bit with the review process as well. Black Hat will always be a deep technical conference. We do look for technical talks, but there are a few talks that also appeal to the business, to CISOs, to CIOs, and naturally, it's the natural evolution. The days of pure deep technical stuff at Black Hat have been changing to accommodate everybody in all walks and manners.
Anybody wants to get on this?
That on the show floor too. Richard put out his data on Black Hat. There's 308 cybersecurity specific vendors now on the show floor. Love the research and that people really do go and attend the research, and that's so exciting. But the event really has become commercialized from that perspective, and I'm curious what panelists think about, is Black Hat the next RSA, and is like DEF CON or B-Sides the next Black Hat, or is that not going to happen?
Those are fighting words.
I think it's a very different audience, right? Like, some examples, and as we were discussing, the Akamai presenters that are at Black Hat, right? These are, senior scientists, these are researchers, deep on the technology side, but they do bring a lot of data and insights in the business context, right? That, hey, the AI scraper bots are scraping the internet. They're taking away your information. So how do you go about it? What do you do about it? Right? Or they're looking at how did we kind of figure out something on a 0 day or a CVE. So I think they do a good job of associating some of the core technical concepts up to the business impact or the global impact of those things. I always feel that, all of the partnerships get announced at RSA, all the kind of technical work gets socialized at Black.
Yeah, I hope it stays that way.
Good point. So let's start with a prediction. I know, Sean, you're having some mic problem. Can you talk?
I have camera problems, mic problems. The tech's my enemy today, which is maybe a
Want to
prediction.
give it a go, or we start with a prediction round?
Well, I wanted maybe to this point, I want to lean on something Daniel's talking about, kind of old technologies running in the organization, HTTP1, right, for example. And maybe Richard looking at how many vendors there are, maybe the consolidation. So I put a call out on LinkedIn the other day where I'm thinking we continue to add stuff. Certainly we add more tech to the business to make it run, but we're also adding more security layers. And I don't see a lot of taking stuff away. So we're just adding layers and adding defense. And at some point that complexity, in my opinion, is going to be problematic. Do we see anything related to, maybe this is a consolidation thing, maybe it's the research is showing we need to get rid of some things that are hanging on to, that are legacy and Achilles heel for the business? Do we expect to see any of that, or any other predictions along those lines, perhaps?
I could predict that won't happen, despite all the talk. And there's this there's not a CISO on the planet that doesn't say we've got too many tools, we have to consolidate, I want one dashboard to rule them all, which is complete BS, right? That is it just identifies the CISO immediately as somebody who doesn't have hands-on experience, right? Because no matter what, the person who manages the firewalls doesn't need to be using the same dashboard as the person who manages the identity management system. Just doesn't need to happen. And if you mix those two together, you're going to spend a lot of wasted time from a development standpoint, as well as training and, of course, expense, because you're going to be single vendor. And that's what Palo Alto wants, right? They want to be Microsoft. They want to say, you know what? You got to buy it all, and it's going to cost you this much, and you don't have a choice. Take it or leave it. And, the urge on the part of CISOs to call for that kind of platform is driven completely by the purchasing departments. Those are the only people whose lives get easier, is they got one contract with one vendor. And of course, the only reason any of us are here today is because 25 years ago, the CIOs made the decision to go with one vendor for servers and desktops. And that's how we got where we are, a Microsoft world that's riddled with vulnerabilities, with 4,400 cybersecurity vendors to address all those problems.
Richard, I just want to add to that. The other thing that I find fascinating is that bugs that should have died still exist. So Rupesh, one of your people, Ryan Barnett, is doing a talk, and I'm not going to talk about Ryan, actually. I'm going to talk about a very interesting fact. Isabella, who's co-presenting with Ryan, is actually a teenager, and I think she's the youngest ever Black Hat speaker. presenting at Black Hat on a bug class that is probably older than her, Unicode normalization. And she's bypassed WAFs and other security devices that everybody uses on the edge. I'm like, respect. I love this. I love this kind of research. But when the bug class is older than the presenter in 2025, with all these amazing AI tools that are supposed to fix everything and are we out of a job, you start wondering, to go back to your point, we're not reducing the attack surface. Like, these bugs are known. Like, they should be an easy fix, but it's taking new eyes, really cool young researchers coming in and saying, oh, that's cool, we can do that. And then you have all these major products going, that's it, it's game over. And I think that's what's fascinating about like being involved in research. It's seeing new eyes look at old problems again.
Sounds like the mosquito that killed the dinosaur, right? I mean,
I think you gotta look at it from like an engineering leader or a CTO or a technology leader's perspective too, right? And for example, right, it's great to see Ryan and Izzy present, and she's phenomenal, and I look forward to seeing them in person at Black Hat. And but my technical team, my engineering team would say that if you want me to go through the thing, I will need 4x the team that I have. So you want me to work on the product, or you want me to fix everything? Right? So that I think is still at the core of the security industry that we're at, right?
Yep.
The pace at which we're able to fix things or patch or this or that, like it's still very kind of like one at a time versus more kind of global in nature. So a long ways to go.
Yep.
So Sean and I have talked about this a lot, but the same theme, I call it the fog of more. And Richard alluded to this as well. I think there is a balance. To your point, anybody that tells you they're a one-stop shop, they're lying, or some of the capabilities aren't going to meet what the organization actually needs. Right? Completely agree with you. But also to Daniel's point, once there's a new idea, to be flooded with 300-400 new vendors to address that one issue, I think that's a problem as well. So I think there's a balance. There needs to be some level of consolidation. Let's kind of wade through the fog a little bit, because let's face it, similar to RSA, we know there's a lot of vaporware out there, right? And I think it's sniffing through that and being able to make smart decisions, not just from the perspective of a CISO, but a CIO and from a business perspective as well. We need to rationalize not only from a tool perspective, but also from an action perspective. And one thing, and maybe I'll just tee this up, Marco, in terms of maybe a more specific technical risk that we're seeing that I hope is going to be talked about at Black Hat, MCP. MCP is really scary. Just to hit the wave tops, I think as we all know, there's a lot of good that's coming out of this, but the fact that there's no front door tokenization, the fact that traceability relative to what's going on through MCP, right? I mean, it could really be any user, any ID. How do you know what's actually been done by who? Mm-hmm. The fact that, the direction is being taken from the LLM. There's obviously no judgment. All it's doing is consuming the direction from an LLM perspective. And the fact that a pure rewrite could happen in that model and that there's no kill switch, right? I mean, it's different. You can say if a user is inactive in 15 minutes, but we're not doing that from an MCP perspective. So I'll stop there. I think that's a big one to get a little more technical that is scaring us from our client's perspective, and I hope it's going to be talked about.
I want to do this. Let's make a round, and I'm going to put a little twist in here because Michael, you said this is what I hope we talk about. So this was born as the idea of let's guess what the buzzword is going to be, which is not necessarily going to be the one that we want to hear, right? So maybe we can do a little round of saying, I think this is going to be the trendy one, but I wish we could actually focus on what is relevant to each one of you, obviously. So let's start with Daniel. considering you probably have seen more than anyone else.
I think there's going to be a lot of everything AI, all the things. It's inevitable. Leslie, you talked about 300 plus vendors. I can guarantee 90% of them are going to offer some kind of AI tool when we all know they're not going to have AI. Right? That's the God honest truth, but I think that's going to be the thing. What I would like people to talk about with this tooling in the AI world and MCP, great option, Michael, is context. What I'm not seeing at the moment around anything to do with AI and the enterprise and stuff is context. It's give us your data and we'll do something with it. But I want others to work with, and I'm really hoping that A2A and MCP kind of gives us that. That's my hope and my prediction for what's going to come out over the next week. I might be horribly wrong, but that's at least what I'm hoping.
Who's next?
I'll follow up on the AI because for sure that will be the buzzword, even though it was last year. But that's almost laughable last year compared to this year, right? Because we didn't have agents being talked about or being applied. Now we do. We've got real companies selling real stuff and earning revenue with their agentic solutions. There are, let's say, there are 29 agentic solutions for basically doing triage, and then a handful of vulnerability management solutions, another handful of attack, automated red teaming kind of stuff going on. The biggest percentage are guardrails, for all the people that, of course, there's more fear of AI introducing information and power to employees than there is, excitement about, how can our company use AI? So, of course, those are the first ones to get well funded. That was the very first thing that Palo Alto claimed to produce a product for after RSA 2 years ago. And of course, the very first acquisition they made of Protect AI was a kind of guardrail, but AI model protection company. So tons of those. It'll be a long time for those sort out. What I'm hoping of the 21 pure AI security vendors that are exhibiting at Black Hat next week, I'm hoping that we'll start to identify the winners and losers as quickly as possible, right? Because it's going to be really frustrating if what's a good example? I insult somebody, but if the well-funded but horrible product gets all the traction and then gets the $500 million exit, that would be a disaster. But there are some amazing people working on an amazing technology, all of them using the exact same approach. So I can't differentiate, their success based on their approach. It's all going to be on their execution. And of course, that depends a lot on their relationships with CISOs right now.
Well, I'll jump in with a thought on this. In that, there's certainly a lot of tech being discussed, and I think the problem, Richard, you're talking about the use of data and AI to, or the worry of the data and AI to put the company at risk. I'm just wondering that the promise of AI, though, is efficiency and optimization and automation and orchestration and all the stuff that connects multiple people and data sets and systems and APIs and services together to do stuff faster and more effectively and efficiently than before.
Completely.
So I'm wondering, will we hear those conversations? What are the scenarios that we're trying to enable, or will it be, here are the weaknesses, regardless of the scenario, here are the weaknesses, here's the research we've done, here are the threats that do exist, might exist, and we need solutions to protect against that? Or I guess, do we have the business view and the operational view, or are we still in the tech and the weakness view?
I could add, Sean. So I get to meet with a lot of enterprise customers, across the globe, and I feel that everybody is working and looking at how can they build, whether it's a conversational AI agent or an agentic AI, or look at their business flows, workflows, etc., and start to kind of because there's so much, to your point, promise on productivity, on personalization. The business gain is very high, or at least touted as very high. So the technical teams are kind of racing to do that. And there's data like, McKinsey had a report, 80% of the enterprises have one or so use case already in the works, right? So I think all of that is happening. It's real, it's here. From a cybersecurity perspective, I think there is still kind of a lot of work that needs to be done for these customers to really start to kind of have that, protection, that armor, because we are not, kind of fully, the customers are not fully understand or aware of the kind of threat landscape, the kind of risks, etc. Right? So that is what is happening. But there are use cases that are plenty, and they are being rolled out every single day. And I think it's going to change the way we do business and we do things. We just talked about MCP. I mean, the whole point of any company or enterprise having an MCP is an ability to enable agentic workflows in this kind of supply chain, format, right? So I think it is real, at least in all the conversations I'm having.
Leslie.
Yeah, jumping in there. I mean, agentic AI definitely will be the topic. Kind of thought it was last year and we'd move on this year, but that's not happening at all. Hearing that that's really going to dominate, and love hearing about the cool research. Daniel, you mentioned one on its promptware, targeted promptware attacks on Gemini through a Google Calendar with or at SafeBreach and two guys from Technion. So super cool. Love to hear about that. But what my hope is that, kind of back to the FUD, that it's not just FUD discussions, that there are, productive discussions on what approaches are working to manage and secure all this. And we're seeing, and this kind of goes back to my days with Michael, when we first met in GRC, we are seeing more companies popping up or getting funding in, GRC, but really more risk and resilience now. And so it's not like a sexy topic, but I think that's a hope that there is productive discussions around like governance of AI.
Yep. Just to add that, there's one talk that I've been trying to get for a decade, and it's being delivered, and I'm so excited. It's basically Renee, Dave, and Christopher. They're doing a deep dive into the ugly world of ad tech, and how OCGs are abusing ads. And I've yet to see a single enterprise customer or anybody who blocks or strips adverts at the border. And I'm really hoping this talk kind of opens people's eyes to see how ugly and evil and pervasive that world is. We think about NSO and nation state, they have nothing on the ad tech network. So it's this kind of research that I want people to see and go, oh crap, yeah, maybe we should stop blocking ads, little things.
That's where the money comes from. So that's going to be a tough one.
Hey, just block all the ads, right? They have to figure out another way now.
I'm with you there. Totally.
Michael, you want to take it again? You kind of started this, and I think maybe now you want to just summarize it a little bit better, or more, not better.
Yeah.
Sorry. More.
Yeah, maybe just to dive a little deeper based off of what Leslie was saying, what Richard indicated as well. To get a little sharper, I think there's going to be a lot of talk about responsible use of AI. I'm so sick of hearing that term, right? And I know that it's important, but I think to Leslie's point, what's real? Are we really going to define how to control that? Having a policy, having a procedure. I could tell you, even looking at this from the compliance perspective, things like ISO 42001 that are out there now. I mean, it's all policy and procedure focus. We're not talking about how do we actually implement responsible use of AI. So I think it's going to be talked about a lot, but I hope there's going to be some sessions, and more importantly, some good conversations and sharing across organizations to say, how do you actually implement that?
I'm curious from obviously Black Hat. This current edition is in Las Vegas, hence the USA set of conversations, but widely attended from folks all over the world, and clearly as Black Hat in other parts of the world as well. I'm just wondering, from an international and global perspective, do we see any shifts or trends or items that kind of bubble up to the top with respect to, I'll say, data sovereignty or regional aspects of how we enable the business, protect the business, regulate the business, and keep all this stuff safe? I mean, the data sovereignty is probably the biggest one that comes to mind, but especially as we look at international managed security response organizations or things like that. So I don't know, any thoughts from folks?
Well, I looked at the one aspect because there's talk that, visitors to Vegas is down 20% because of the difficulties at the border and the abject fear of people visiting the U.S. right now. I always remind them, hey, when I go to South Africa, I'd be terrified to go there. I just have to remind myself that there are millions of people who live very safely there. You have to do the same thing when you come into the U.S. But I looked at the numbers and I was thinking, oh, we're going to see a huge drop-off in non-U.S. vendors exhibiting. Not the case. I was all ready to call up Leslie and say, I've got some news. We could pulse this around. Nope, not the case. Exact same representation this year as last year of non-U.S. companies. So that's cool.
I am seeing a lot of peers not wanting to travel to the US.
Yep.
And that's the first time in a very long time. They've made that conscious decision to not cross the border, and they go to very interesting countries, but they've decided that the US was just a little bit too sketchy, which is mad to think about.
Reminds me of the ITAR years in the Clinton administration, right? It was like the top encryption workers couldn't come to the U.S. for conferences.
Yep.
So we went to Anguilla, right, for the financial one.
Yep.
I want to put a little bit of a different spin on that, on what Richard was saying, and international vendors, let's say, being open to attending and exhibiting at Black Hat. So maybe this is the pessimist in me, or going back to the fear, but is any of that related to potential abuse of offensive security tools and vendors? Like, do we worry about that, where you've got international vendors that are there, and is there a different motivation relative to working with U.S. organizations from an IP perspective? I don't know, I'll just throw it out there. I mean, we hear examples of that exist today, right? That's happening. I mean, you hear about MSPs, you hear about providers that, they may be using red team services or pen testing to cover up for something else that they're doing within an organization. Is that something that we're concerned about? Will that be talked about?
I think it'll be talked about. It's not something I'm concerned about. I think the vast majority I've spoken to have large caches of JD Vance memes, and they're very nervous about traveling with them. So
there you go.
I'm going to switch this up. Oh, go ahead, Prabhesh.
The one thing common that I see is that, again, year after year, we continue to see sort of, the most innovations when it comes to cybersecurity is from Tel Aviv, from Israel, Israeli companies, Israeli folks, Israeli researchers, because I think there's so much kind of like focus over there in terms of, how the VCs work and how the companies work, how the students go through their education process, etc. So that is something that we see again and again. So we'll see a lot of that represented at Black Hat too. But I do worry that I don't think there is enough kind of like, localized cyber tech and armor, right? So if Asia is rolling out, data sovereignty and other rules and regulations, and every country and every market is different, I don't know if there is enough kind of like, security tech available that is kind of like localized, So it's an interesting dimension of, you take innovation from one area to apply to the whole world, but all these rules and regulations are coming in from a very different, angle, and is all of that, Leslie mentioned GRC and other things. I don't know how it all kind of gets put together. So that would be interesting to see.
So I'm gonna put this out there, and each of you can kind of think about it through your own lens here, and the space that you look at this through. And I'm going to start with you, Daniel. But is there anything novel? And this goes to all of you, but I'll start with Daniel. Is there anything novel that you think will kind of shine through? Is there an investment made that says, "Ooh, that's an interesting space. I haven't seen that," or is there a new innovation, or is there a new way that somebody's talking about something? I'm kind of going around the block here. Is there a new policy or regulation that's surfacing that we're going to come across? And then to round it out and bring it back to Daniel, is there a talk that you mentioned one you wanted to hear for 10 years, you finally saw, but is there another one that's kind of novel to you, touching on a certain area of technology or a certain way of looking at something that strikes you? And then we'll kind of do a round of your own perspective on this question.
I don't think there's anything this year that stands out as a new way of looking at it. The trend I've got from the last couple of years is the bugs I was finding in the 90s and the early 2000s with friends are now being rediscovered by a whole new generation with all the tooling that they have now. And like our tools back then were primitive. They really were. We didn't have access to the information that we have now. And I think armed with the power of generative AI and the curiosity and the tooling that is available to people today, I'm really impressed with this new generation. And I think the bugs that we're seeing, like, they put me to shame. So that's the interesting part for me. It's like stuff that, bugs in Telnet, bugs in very old protocols that everybody thought they've been done. They're done to death. We're now seeing these cool new bugs, and the mean time from finding it to weaponizing it to all that kind of stuff is so much shorter than it was 20, 25, 30 years ago when I was doing it.
Rupesh, I'm going to go to you from the innovation perspective, new ways of tackling old problems or new problems, surfacing new ways to find new solutions.
I think so. I feel like, we always kind of go, so there are two big concepts, right? So how much can you kind of protect from the inside out and how much from the outside in, right? And we see the technology or security companies kind of constantly modulating, on both sides of that. And I think as we enter the world of AI, it's a lot more kind of difficult and complicated because you want to, deploy so many different AI-based applications internal to your enterprise and do all of that stuff, but unclear whether, is it going to be all outside in protection? Is it going to be inside out? What is that layered defense, capabilities, etc. So I'm looking forward to, better understanding how people are thinking about it, because you need a much more kind of scalable solution in this space, right? Because you think of it, if I'm an enterprise, I got 30 teams doing AI apps. Do I protect all of them in a certain way, or do I go app by app? Right? It's a complex problem.
And Richard, kind of the bigger, or not the bigger, but a different view of that same thing. Yeah. Investments or whatever going on there.
Yeah, I don't expect to see novelty at Black Hat or any of the big conferences, right? Because I mentioned the time lag between invention and being in a position where you can be at a conference, especially on the exhibitor side. And I encounter novel stuff every week as people reach out to me. Hey, look at this cool thing I built, and it's mind blowing, and you can see what it's going to be like 15 years from now after $100 million in investment. But they're not going to be at Black Hat. They're not even. Yeah, they're not sending somebody. They're too busy building it and working on it, right? So there's so much cool stuff like that going on that will be there in the future. It won't be novel anymore, though. And as far as we always look for what are the big investments going to be, the big acquisitions. And quite often it's the week before that we get those announcements, not during the conference. And of course, Palo Alto has already announced that they're acquiring CyberArk for $25 billion. And they had to release that because they're both public companies, so they couldn't hold that off any longer. I think that was it. That was the big acquisition. We won't hear a bigger one next week, but I've been wrong before. So It could happen. There'll be a lot of acquisitions, no question. There's been a lull since July 1st in announced acquisitions. They're probably saving all those up for early next week, and that'll fill out, it'll get us back on track to about an $18 billion investment and 300. I think we're going to be at 360 acquisitions this year at the current rate.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And Mike, to you, obviously you have a lot of insight into risk and GRC and policy and regulation and all that stuff. But anything that comes to mind there or elsewhere?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there'll be anything novel relative to new frameworks or standards or cybersecurity or regulation, as we know, considering the significant lag there. But one thing that I think will be somewhat new from a thought process perspective, and Sean, you and I have talked about this for years, Leslie as well, and Marco, cybersecurity insurance. So I do think that the industry has finally started to move in that direction. I think there'll be some new thinking and discussions around that, whether it's leveraging new vendor solutions or refocusing where the risk actually exists relative to that process.
You're reading my mind, man. It's scary. And so, Leslie, same question to you, and perhaps obviously you work with a lot of organizations that deliver products, help the community, but you also interact with a lot of media and publications. So, anything on any of those sides that strike you as we will or we should hear talk about that?
I mean, the media are definitely looking at agentic AI. Cloud and identity, zero trust, risk. They want to hear about policy regulation. One thing that we're seeing from vendors and like where investments are going is into offensive security in order to prepare better cyber defenses. So I think that's exciting. Whether it's red teaming or pen testing or breach and attack simulation or attack surface management tools that look into, areas that have been hidden before. Gartner's really putting a lot of focus on that, as an analyst firm, putting a lot of focus on what they're calling like preemptive exposure management and this whole CTEM category. So, but I think that the offensive look is exciting so that we can get to better cyber defenses. And definitely we're seeing a lot of investments in securing OT, not just IT. And on the cyber insurance side, Marsh is going to be coming out with a report on, for the first time, calculating what an actual OT cyber loss number looks like for the country and globally. So that really helps drive awareness as well.
Super cool.
Fun. So we touched on a lot of things and we're closing here, but I look at this industry as an outsider, coming from sociology more than anything else. And it seems to me that a lot of you have pointed out the fact that there's always something new, but we didn't resolve the old. And I think that's a really big problem for the industry, but also for society as a whole. And I feel like if there is nothing novelty and new, which I feel it's something that this industry is really thriving on, and we always need that something new, the new threat, the new solution, maybe we need to stop always finding the something new and really focus on clarity and somebody of you said context and really trying to resolve what we have, like prioritizing. Instead of throwing more stuff, why don't we try to fix the first level of security? I know it's easy to say and hard to do, so don't point the finger at me. But
sounds like you have an article in the works here, Mark.
Yeah, of course there is. But from a societal perspective, I feel like every time I go to Black Hat, and it's going to be number, 12 or something like that, I feel like I'm more scared now than what I used to be 11 years ago. It looks like we were getting somewhere, and now I feel like we're not. So sorry if I throw like a wrench in there, but that's how society feels, I think.
Marco, AI will fix everything. Just remember that.
Thank God.
Yep.
I think so. Marco, I'll comment on that. That's not where I thought you were going. I thought you were going to say what still isn't fixed that we're not going to be talking about because we're on to the new thing. And in my mind, foundationally, I love that. I think it's how training and education is delivered. It works for some, especially when we're talking about very technical related concepts, but it doesn't work for the average individual or user. I don't think it has for a number of years, right? So why do we still have individuals and users? As we know, people are 90% of the problem. It's not technology. Why are they still taking certain actions for risks and things that we know have existed for over 20 years? They're still doing it. With the new risks and threats and technology, I think we're going to have repeats of that as well. And my perspective is whatever our industry training model, education model is, I think it needs to be fixed, and it hasn't been fixed in quite some time.
Michael, can I just add to that? Why is it that users can't click on the clickety thing that was designed to be clicked in a safe and secure way?
Yeah, that's fair.
My toaster doesn't kill me every time I put toast in it. So I should be able to click on stuff without getting owned. I think there's the fundamental problem. As you said, Marco, but we're a magpie industry. We like fresh and shiny new things, and the old stuff, making stuff secure, that's boring. Nobody cares about that. We care about giant pandas and other figurines that I'm sure we'll see at the show floor where we glamorize.
Oh God! No, don't go there.
But that's another rant we probably don't have time for.
No, we will though. We will though.
Yeah, puppies and goats. Yeah, and I heard maybe just a final thought for me on this. I heard the other day from a good friend that perhaps even with all, I have two thoughts here. Perhaps even with all the thoughts and the research, some research, and even awareness, broad scale, perhaps we're putting too much emphasis on the risk and not really quantifying it back to the business. And I think teams are investing in prevention, detection, response, insurance, and all this stuff. And I don't think we can really quantify whether or not we've saved money or prevented loss, or now, of course, if something happens, we can say here was the loss, but it's hard to say whether the stuff works and whatnot. And so this friend of mine was saying perhaps we shouldn't be making as much investment in certain areas that we are right now. And the other thing I was going to say is that in terms of awareness, Black Hat does a great job bringing a lot of organizations, a lot of people together to look at research and look at solutions. But there are far more number of organizations that don't go. And those are the ones I'm really worried about, because whether or not you're making a conscious decision to make an investment or not, I think there's still, even with all that we do, there's still a lack of awareness wide scale here. So I don't know how we get across that either, but just keep talking, I guess.
I did want to call out from our perspective that there is an analyst day at Black Hat now that Omdia leads, but they're going to be releasing their data on CISO buying decisions. So kind of back to your point, Sean, on quantifying, there's business outcomes, but also, quantifying investments and what's working. I think that will be good data. But hats off to Daniel and the team for always bringing it back to the research, and really excited to see what we're gonna hear next week.
Yeah, hats off to all of you for all that you do, and most importantly for taking this time today. Marco and I appreciate that, and love hearing your insights and love seeing your faces, and we'll see you all live in person next week in Las
Yeah,
Vegas. So yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Wish everybody safe journey. Enjoy using your burner phone and enjoy all the parties and all the other good stuff, and clearly the research that is being presented, and the trainings, and a lot of the other sessions and expo hall, and on and on and on. Thank you all. Marco, any final thoughts to wrap?
I feel very good about my toaster now, and I think, Daniel, I will use that for my next article. I really love that.
You all
take the train.
That peace of mind.
What's that, Richard?
I'm reminding him to take the training or read the manual, and not supposed to poke a knife into that.
Yeah, here's a branding idea for someone to bring toasters on the floor, black hat, and show how you can be as secure as a toaster. Oh yeah, well that was a DEF CON though.
I'm waiting for underpants swag. We've had socks, and we know we're going to get underpants. It's a given, right? Anyway.
See if we cross that boundary.
The booth with the goats will have underpants.
Well, thank you again. I'm really excited to see you all next week, and yeah, it was great to put these bright minds together. Leslie, Michael, Rupesh, Richard, Daniel, and Sean. Thank you for coming.
And you.
Thanks all.
Hey, Sean, do you know what? I think that our listener want real protection against cyber risk, and I know that HITRUST is the leader in cybersecurity assurance. But what makes them the go-to choice?
Well, according to our friends at HITRUST, because their framework covers 100% of the known tactics, techniques, and procedures, in 2024, organizations with a HITRUST certification had just a 0.59% incident rate, meaning 99.41 stayed breach-free.
That's solid, but what about staying sharp over time?
HITRUST regular certification process isn't just a checkbox, it actually drives improvement. Repeat customers see up to 54% fewer corrective actions needed year over year. And now with their new AI security assessment and certification, you can actually tackle AI risk with confidence as well.
Then check out the HITRUST framework. Go to hitrustalliance.net to learn more.